We all know the footage of Max Verstappen going from 3rd to 1st at the start of the 2021 Imola Grand Prix. The F1 page on Twitter showed this in the week before the Imola Grand Prix and it sparked a debate. The most vocal part of that debate was of the opinion that it was dirty driving from Verstappen and it was the FIA's fault for allowing it. This inspired me to do a video about Max Verstappen's driving standards. Is it dirty or is it dominant? I'm Wimbo. Here's 3 seconds to leave a like. Reputation. A very young Max Verstappen entered the F1 scene in 2015. He was 17 years old and his presence in the sport had already sparked a debate. People thought he was too young and he had too little experience in single-seaters. He went on to prove them wrong with very daring and attractive racing on the limit. And sometimes over the limit. The next season he replaced Daniel Kvyat in the Red Bull team and his reputation got a little worse. He kept blocking drivers from passing him, even just before the braking zone. Especially Kimi Raikkonen fell victim to those tactics. After what Max Verstappen did in Belgium, the quiet Finn said this: "I'm all up for close battles, but when I have to brake after Eau Rouge at full speed when he turns in front of me, that's not correct in my view." Max Verstappen wasn't fazed by what the 2007 world champion said. He felt that if he did something wrong, there would have been a penalty. He said, "Yeah, otherwise I should have got a penalty if it was not correct. So I think it was fair today." So Charlie Whiting of the FIA introduced a new rule about moving in the braking zone, which people quickly called the Verstappen rule. Fun fact is that Sebastian Vettel was very much in favor of this rule and was then the first driver to be penalized for it at the Mexican Grand Prix when Daniel Ricciardo tried to overtake him. The rules basically say that if the attacking driver has to take evasive action, or when the driver in front makes an abnormal change of direction, or a dangerous move in general, a penalty will be applied. Now this rule was toned down somewhat later, but in principle this still counts. Niki Lauda had looked at Max Verstappen's driving and said that Max should go and see a psychiatrist, to which young Max Verstappen said, "Great, we can go together." Now this attitude made him loved by many, but it also gave him many haters. There was an established order in the standings and those fan bases didn't like it when this youngster started shaking things up. His talent and potential were clearly visible, making that group of fans uneasy. In the following years, Max Verstappen had a learning curve like all young drivers have when they enter the sport. In his desire to show himself, Verstappen made a few moves that he wouldn't make today. I always found that the reaction to it from the media was always a little harsh. Nobody seemed to take into account that he was a teenager and still had a lot to learn. So Max Verstappen, despite giving the F1 community loads of entertainment, was marked a dirty driver. It's probably the same people you'll see in the comments here later. So my question is, what is a dirty driver? In my humble opinion, it's all about the intention. So if the intention is to go for a gap to gain a position, then that's not dirty. If the intention is to make the space for someone to overtake as small as possible, then that's not dirty. If your intention is to race hard, then that's just hard racing. It's how the other driver reacts that usually causes the issues. I can give plenty of examples of what I described up here where Verstappen went for a gap that was close too late. For instance, Monza 2021. Lewis Hamilton had a slow pit stop after Max Verstappen had an even slower pit stop. This was due to Toto Wolff pushing for a mid-season TD to change the pit stop procedure. But that's another video. Hamilton blocked Max's path straight after the pit lane exit line and Max Verstappen just stuck around through turn 1 and turn 2. For Verstappen to have that car on the inside of turn 2 meant that the space was initially there but was closed off by Hamilton fairly late. Verstappen tried to drive as close to the curb as possible to prevent a crash, but he hit that dangerous sausage curb and was lifted on top of Hamilton's car. It was never his intention to take Hamilton out. The stewards ruled that Verstappen was predominantly to blame because he didn't use the escape route. He didn't do enough to prevent a collision. I suppose that's fair enough, but it wasn't dirty driving. In the Imola example from the start of the video, Max Verstappen started in P3 and had a great start in the wet. He was alongside Hamilton in the first turn. They were side by side towards the next turn, and with Max on the left hand side and the Tamburello chicane also turning to the left, Max Verstappen had the advantage on the inside, was marginally ahead of the apex, kept his car on track and got himself into the lead. Lewis Hamilton had stuck around on the outside and they touched, which caused Hamilton to lose a bit of bodywork. That was hard racing with Verstappen's only intent to get into the lead. No intention of making contact, so not a dirty move. I have another example that riled people up, saying that it was typical of Verstappen, and I'll follow it up with another example of someone doing something to Verstappen. In the Las Vegas Grand Prix in 2023, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc had a scrap at the start of the race. Leclerc on pole, Verstappen in P2 on the dirty side of the track. Verstappen had a great start and arrived at the inside of the first corner to the left, ahead of Leclerc. So the turn was his. On cold tires, Verstappen couldn't keep it on track, so he pushed Leclerc wide. Now, there was a runoff area there, so Leclerc gave him the space and they continued. I do agree that Verstappen expected to have more grip. Perhaps he could have known it was a risky move. Still, it wasn't a dirty move. The only intention was to gain a position, so I don't understand why the haters were freaking out so much. The example that I have that relates to this is the sprint race in Baku in 2023. George Russell and Max Verstappen were fighting for position after starting from P4 and P3. Russell nearly touched Verstappen in turn 1, and in turn 2 Russell did touch Verstappen's car, resulting in a big hole in the side pod for the Dutchman. What happened there? Well, Verstappen arrived at that turn first and took the apex. Russell was behind him and stuck a wheel in. Now, that wouldn't have been a problem if it was on a track with a runoff, like in Las Vegas. In Baku, there are walls, because it is a street track. Verstappen was already as far against the wall as possible, but Russell stubbornly kept pushing and caused damage to Verstappen's car. Perhaps Verstappen has made those moves as well in the past, but I can tell you that he does it with more precision than what Russell did there. The reaction from Russell after the race, saying he had cold tires, didn't fly with Verstappen, because they all had cold tires. It was just a too ambitious move from George Russell. Not a dirty move though, just a bit silly. So what are examples of dirty moves then? Well, the master of dirty moves was, of course, Michael Schumacher. He treated every driver on track as a mortal enemy, not caring if they had been teammates before or whether it was a title contender. Same rules applied. In the 2010 Hungarian Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher drove for Mercedes, but they weren't the strong Mercedes of a few years later. Schumacher was perhaps also not the strong Schumacher from the Ferrari years. The driving standard was the same for Schumacher though. His old teammate Barrichello had a lot more pace when he tried to overtake Schumacher, who edged him closer and closer to a wall at 300 km per hour. That was a dirty move. In 2004, Schumacher and Montoya were fighting for position, and Schumacher didn't appreciate that very much, so he pushed Montoya clean off the road. And instead of a runoff, there was grass there, so that could have ended in tears. In the press conference, Schumacher played innocent, saying he hadn't seen Montoya, but it was a bit of dirty driving. The cases that Schumacher had with Damon Hill in Adelaide or with Villeneuve in Jerez need no explanation. I always loved Schumacher's determination, but he took it too far sometimes. Another move I always classify as dirty driving is that move drivers do when they can't handle being overtaken on the outside. They sometimes pretend to have a bit of oversteer and take them out. Lewis Hamilton has made this move several times throughout his career. Always by accident obviously, but it all adds up. The biggest example of that pit maneuver was of course Silverstone 2021. And guess what? Those people judging Max Verstappen for dirty driving said he had it coming, it was a good lesson, and he should have backed out. After being in front in 5 turns and ahead at Copse, Max Verstappen should have backed out and let Hamilton win. Well, I know Max Verstappen isn't a dirty driver. He's a dominant driver who doesn't let there be any doubt on whose corner it is. He's precise and he knows exactly what he's doing 99% of the time. And that's why he's never caused a wreck like this. Subscribe. Take care now. Doei doei.